Like it or not, I agree with what you said. This is how you maintain standards. This is how you do not allow mediocrity to fester.
You're saying that there was mediocrity at Kotoko?
I think there was. I think Ogum lost control of the dressing room. If you paid attention to his press conferences, there were signs of that. In fact, last week, when the club released that press statement, essentially warning people not to criticize the club and trying to police public commentary, Ogum's lineup in that game against Accra Lions was one that for me was very curious. And he was asked after the game as to why he made those changes. So he dropped some really important players. Kwame Poku, who's been the best player at the club since he rejoined. He dropped him. He dropped Justice Blay. He dropped Baba Yaya as well. And when he was asked, his explanation was that, yes, it was not because the fans asked for changes because they realized that the team was leggy. He felt the team needed some fresh legs, and it was just a coincidence that the calls of the fans reflected in or just sort of matched or coincided with the decisions that he had made. But I didn't agree with him when he said that. For me, it was a sign of a manager who was bowing to the pressure and trying to win some political currency in a very difficult situation. I think Ogum himself has not exactly covered himself in glory. You mentioned the fact that they'd won none of their last 4 games and how in 3 weeks they've dropped from top of the table to being now some 6 points behind league leaders, maybe in the goal stars. But it's not just what has happened in the last 4 weeks, but also we've seen this run before. From October 27 to November 11, Kotoko did not win a single game. They went on a run of 5 consecutive games without a win.
That period.
They drew only once, and that was against newly promoted Baseke Holy Stars, and they lost 4 consecutive league games. I think that's what Kotoko...
Remember that run.
That's what the management was trying to prevent, another run of 5 consecutive games, because if you look at then 18 months or so, or nearly 2 years that Ogum has been in charge since he returned, they've had 3 different spells of going on 5 consecutive games without a win.
They've had those spells.
The first one in the first season when he returned was the one that ended up at Menchia, where he and the playing body had to go and explain why the team was not doing well. And he was given the vote of confidence to continue. When the team went for preseason after that, I saw something that for me was a massive red flag, because when Ogum returned, he was listed as a member of the management team. And that gave him limitless control over transfers. And so he essentially became more than a coach. He became a manager in the sense that now he was involved in player contracts. He was involved in player negotiations, in essentially being the one who could veto.
So he had absolute control.
He had absolute control. What did Ogum do with that? Signed about 14 new players when he came. At the beginning of the next season, Ogum sacked about 12 of those players, 12 of the new players that he signed. And then when he was asked at the press conference, he said that he needed to make changes, and he promised that the new signings will deliver silverware and good times for the club. That, for me, was the first sign of trouble. One, you had a manager who had failed to meet his objectives, because in his first season, he finished 6th on the league table with 49 points. There was no league. There was no FA Cup silverware. The football was bad. And in admitting that the signings that he made a mistake, he sacked over 90% of the players that he signed. In any properly run organization, the sort of control that allowed him to make those mistakes in the first place will be reviewed at the very least. It will either be taken away from you, or you will have considerably less autonomy in that area. But it did not happen. He stayed on as a member of the management team and still decided who played for the team. And here's the thing. You may want to hide behind the cloak of Kwesi Appiah as the head of the technical unit. But in the period that he got that job, his preoccupation has been with Sudan because of the AFCON qualifiers and the World Cup qualifiers as well.
In absolute control.
So you had a scenario where Kwesi Appiah, who is the most experienced football person at the club, had another job that was far too demanding for him to prioritize Kotoko. Then you had Emmanuel Dasuberi jumping ship after 12 months into the job. Then Ogum himself. So ultimately, you were left with a club with only one proper football person, and that was the coach. A club the size of Kotoko, you leave it in the hands of Ogum, part-time Dasuberi, part-time Kwesi Appiah, and then the man whose name I absolutely love, the Nkontomponi Aferi, Nana Apinkra. He means well, but he needs a proper structure around him. So Kotoko did not equip him with that. To make matters worse, they decided to, okay, when things went south, I think it was after that October run, they decided that you are no longer going to be part of the management, so focus on the coaching. Then they brought in Malek Jaber.
Yes.
So you have this situation where no one knows what the club wants to achieve, and for 3 years, Kotoko has not had a board in place. Look, if you had a board in place, a board essentially gives you policy direction. And then the management just fleshes it out.